Mayonnaise is a simple ingredient with a critical mission in professional kitchens. So why is selecting the right mayonnaise so complex? From extra heavy duty to real super premium, the category terminology causes unnecessary confusion. And the lack of standardization can lead to disappointing results, dissatisfied customers, and costly waste. Visit venturafoods.com/mayo needs to help you find the right mayonnaise for your operation.
Hi there, I'm Pat Coby, Senior Menu Editor of Restaurant Business and co-host of Menu Talk. This week, our guest is Patrick Schwing, CMO of Zaxby's, the Atlanta-based chicken chain with nearly 1,000 locations. Zaxby started serving chicken fingers 6 years before Raising Cain's launched theirs, and decades before the recent explosion on restaurant menus. But with chicken tender competition continuing to heat up, Zaxby's has had to work hard to stay ahead of the curve. Schwing is making sure that happens. First off, he's building more awareness about Zaxby's sauce equity by focusing attention on the chain's 12 distinctive sauces. The core menu was restructured so that the chicken fingers and sauces are very visible, and several varieties are now sold at retail as well. Next, he worked with the menu team to build out other categories, including sides, salads, shakes, and desserts. Limited time offers have also become a bigger part of Zaxby's menu strategy. Tacos, a surf and turfs box, and a Zappetizer Trio are a few of the standouts. Schwing is also leading the charge to expand digital menu boards system-wide and partner with pop culture figures for marketing campaigns, like rapper Omar Epps as the sauce boss in a recent promotion. Listen as Schwing describes how Zaxby's is differentiating itself in the crowded chicken space through upgrades in menu, operations, service, marketing, and more. Welcome, Patrick. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Well, let's begin by you telling me how many Zaxby's locations are there now?
We're right on the cusp of 1,000. We'll achieve that by close to the end of the year. So we've got a few under development, but we'll cross the 1,000 unit threshold by 2026.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're doing well on the growth side.
And on the menu innovation side, we wanted to talk a little bit about your strategy and how you've changed it to meet the needs of your customers.
Yeah, I'd love to share that story. And I think it starts with actually our core menu, not necessarily the innovation. And, when we began to look at the business back about 3 years ago, we realized that we had a big opportunity to enhance our core menu, which is obviously the foundation for innovation. And so we took a long, hard look at that. And I'm happy to, walk you through the steps we took to get that in order. And then obviously with that in place, with that foundation locked, we were able to then build really strong innovation pipeline off that strategy.
Well, tell me about the core menu and how you got it into place.
Yeah, as you take inventory of the core menu back in, call it 2022, a few things were pretty obvious. First of all, we play in the chicken tender game, but we have a great diversity within our menu. There's a lot of range. And one of the core beliefs I have is you change to become more of who you are. And when we were a great chicken brand with amazing sauces and a lot of breadth in the menu, and that really differentiates us from a lot of the competition. The second part of the core menu was actually around the architecture. It wasn't very shoppable. And one of the things that we'll talk about throughout our conversation is QSR is a team sport, as you know, whether it be operations or marketing, product supply, or culinary. And we were doing our speed of service a disservice by having a pretty complicated menu with an architecture that made it hard to identify what you wanted. So we went into the core menu. We looked at just a few key things that we wanted to address. One, we wanted our sauce equity to be more prominent. What is the business you're in? Famous fingers and sauces. That's our core, and we made that very visible. The second was building an architecture that made it easy to shop. So as you come to the point of order, you're able to navigate quickly. There's very clear and legible print. All the food looks very, very craveable and very structured. We built out a few key categories that we were deficient in, like sides and desserts, and we added back some salads to make sure that breadth was demonstrated. And at that point, we integrated the new brand building architecture that we had, which is visual identity and color. So it wasn't just a change in terms of the visual identity, it was a really big transition into a more structured menu with the right core products to serve our guests.
Got it. And is the menu larger now than it was before?
We added back two salads, a side, and some shakes, but it's not materially larger. And what's interesting about the way it turned out, if you look at it pre and post, it's actually looks more simple, just because of the way we structured everything. And so what used to be, I think, a little bit almost disorganized in some ways, is now structured in a way that makes it very approachable and easy to navigate. So despite adding a few menu items, we kept the simplicity in place.
And are you talking about a digital menu board as being, simpler to read, or is it a printed menu?
So the vast majority of our restaurants have printed menus. We are investing, I think the future is in digital, whether that be because it creates a premium guest experience, certainly order accuracy, speed of service, add-on, trade up, upsell. We now have digital menu boards at about 100 of our restaurants, so call it 10%, but that's up from, very low numbers around 10 to 15 last year. So we're really making that investment, whether it be in a remodel or in a new store build. Digital menu boards are a big part of our future. And that core menu shows up beautifully there. It's very vibrant, very colorful, and helps us drive a lot of those priority categories that we're looking to build out.
Well, you mentioned sauces, and we all know how important sauces are now because, that seems to where the competition is accelerating. So what are some of your sauces and how are you differentiating your sauces from the competition?
Well, sauce has always been part of what we do, and we have a famous Zax sauce, which is, our signature sauce. I think there's 12 in total, and so we provide a great range of sauce and flavor variety. But Zax sauce is our most important and most beloved. But I do think we take sauce a bit further. I mean, I see what you see in the industry as well. It seems like it's a game everyone's trying to play, but it's always been part of our DNA. And we look at this as we have amazing chicken. I mean, if you've ever had a chicken tender from a place like Zaxby's, it's fantastic. The seasoning, the coating, all of it, hot and fresh, always. But what really is the game changer is the sauce. And I think that what we see in our guest is the mixing and the matching. And we even say dip, dunk, drizzle, right? They take the multiple sauces and they build their own concoction. They put a piece of chicken in their Texas toast and they put some sauce on there. And even our French fries have deep ridges because they were specifically designed to be able to capture a lot of sauce. And so I think it's really integrated throughout every part of our menu. And one of the things we did in the past, call it 24 months, was we brought our sauces out from behind the restaurant into retail with a production partner. So now, you can buy Zaxby's, three of our most prominent sauces, Zax, Spicy Zax, and Tongue Torch, a hotter variety, can be bought at local retail. So we really see our guests reaching for that bottle, collecting their sauce and using it as a form of kind of flavor expression. And we absolutely want to embrace that.
Do you introduce new sauces periodically, or is the 12 a core, selection?
We have over time, and we even developed a campaign called Who's Got the Sauce? I mean, that is the name of our campaign, and we have a sauce boss portrayed by Omar Epps. We do bring things in and out. It takes a lot to earn a spot on the core menu, but I think the most recent example of a sauce that we brought in is a bit of a departure for us, which was lemon pepper. And while it's more of a dry rub experience than a sauce, it plays into that flavor expression. It's certainly a popular flavor, and it's been the most successful LTO in the history of the brand. So that's the most recent example, but we certainly do test a lot.
Well, you mentioned LTOs. So are you focusing more on LTOs now? And what are some of the recent ones you've introduced?
Yeah, I mean, I think culinary is the heartbeat of our restaurants, and innovation is really important right now. You've probably read most recently that, Circana data would suggest that this is the highest degree of discounting we've seen in QSR in 50 years. And that's not a game we really want to play. We've always been about premium products and experience. But in order to do that, if you're not going to discount, you've got to focus on value. And our version of value has a few key tenets. One, great customer service, a great transaction, right? So if you're going to pay a little more, you better feel good about the experience. But the other way to drive traffic and mix and profit for our stores is through innovation. And so we have focused on that in the last 3 years. We test a lot. It's consumer inspired. We exist to serve flavor, but ultimately the guest will decide what wins in our restaurants. Some, through our rigorous process from concept to ideation to consumer location testing to actual store, things fall out. It's a shots on goal game. But we have focused on a lot of innovation and testing. I think the most important ones are the most successful that have really earned a lot of sales from our guests and allowed us to outperform the industry have been in the past, call it 2 years. We actually brought the first new meat block ever in the form of Southern fried shrimp, which has our famous seasoning, but in a shrimp flavor. It pairs beautifully. So we did a surf and turf box with our chicken. That was new for the system, and everyone leaned in, and it did perform excellent. We also had the lemon pepper I talked about. Probably the most innovative form that we did was a quesadilla earlier this year. That quesadilla was a function of a lot of testing, but it was one of our highest selling. It mixed above 10%, which is incredible for QSR. 10-inch flour tortilla, 3 pieces of chicken tenders chopped in there. We had a chicken bacon ranch version. We had a fajita version. And it really allowed us to drive a lot of sales and traffic. So those are a few examples that I think have really served us well this year. The only other platform I think worth mentioning or discussing is shakes. Our business had a heritage in shakes over a decade ago, and namely a signature one called Birthday Cake Shake. A lot of memories, a lot of nostalgia there. It left the system largely for operational reasons, almost a decade ago, and we brought it back in the past 12 months in the form of a shakes platform. And so it's another example of how we're going to innovate and build seasonal relevance with flavors and build out this important sales layer so that guests can add on and trade up. So shakes are another big platform for us.
Does each location have the equipment to make shakes?
We are closing in on 100% installation. As you can imagine, that's a pretty big feat. There's a lot of equipment and gymnastics around the electricity, but we're right there, and all locations should have them by the end of the year.
And I noticed that you're collaborating with brands like Nerds on some of your shakes. So is that something you'll be doing more of in the future?
We look for places where we can drive cultural relevance. And I think what is important about our innovation strategy is that we look at through the lens of the Who's Got the Sauce campaign, right? Is it saucy? Is it distinct? Is it craveable, unique to Zaxby's? Can only we do it? And I think some of the examples I shared with you would suggest yes. But we also look at food that drives a story, and then our marketing amplifies it. And I think the Nerds test, which we are running right now, is a great example of that, because we're trying to marry the product with a story that can be told and people can connect with. Certainly, the Nerds brand has, I do not know of a more popular candy right now. I have 2 young sons, and when you show them the Nerds clusters, it's like, oh my gosh. And so we wanted to see if we could partner with them and build out a great shake, and we think we've done that. So we are still reading the results of the test, but I'm highly encouraged. And then to your question, of course, we're always going to look for the right level of partnerships or borrowed equity from someone else who can have a very complementary, innovative food thought process like we do. But it's got to be the right fit, right? Like they have to have aligned values with our brand. They have to be sauce forward, and they have to be a good fit for our customer. We won't shoehorn things in just for the sake of having a name put out there.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you added shrimp, because just this week, Long John Silver's added chicken to their menu, which is the first for them. So it seems like, concepts that were really focusing on one protein before are now branching out.
Yeah, I think chicken is the hottest category in QSR. I think
Definitely.
probably right alongside Mexican. We just thought about shrimp, and when you think about a product like that, you got to have a point of view. We didn't just want to do shrimp. And so when we did shrimp, we did the surf and turf, and we called it a Zaxby's box. So hopefully that's clever. But what we really wanted to do is we thought our point of view on that category could be the extension of our flavor. And so we took the same breading system and put it in the shrimp. And so it's highly complementary. It works really well with Zax sauce or any of our sauces. And so we felt comfortable entering the fray because we had a really distinct proposition that met an unmet need. Consumers rewarded us with their business. They were really pleased.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun LTO, something that's very different. So, as you mentioned, I mean, chicken is a very competitive category right now, and there, you mentioned some ways that you're staying ahead of the curve, but how do you compete with everybody who's doing chicken?
Well, first of all, you get really good at your core menu. I think consumers look for that degree of consistency and speed. And back to this idea that QSR is a team sport. When we go through that process, the single best thing we can do is serve our core product hot, fresh, and accurate. And our operations partners do a tremendous job. They've made a lot of strides in building consistency within our platform, whether that be in the salads as well. Like having a great fresh salad, which was largely abandoned by QSR during COVID. I think we compare favorably with any place from a salad, from an abundance, quality, freshness, all of it. And when they execute high on those measures, it makes it a little bit easier to distinguish yourself. But the second piece of it, and I think this goes back to your question about how do we feel about sauces, is we still believe we've got the best chicken tender around, but sauce is really how you distinguish yourself. I mean, these are kind of ubiquitous chicken products. I think everyone has launched some form of a tender this year to varying degrees of success and quality. But we do believe that when we execute at a high level and you combine that with our proprietary sauces, it's a high, it really distinguishes you and keeps coming back. That's how you win long term in this category, or when there's a high degree of discounting going on.
Definitely. And how are you marketing Zaxby's menu evolution? Because you talked a lot about how you improved the core menu and how you improved service and even the graphics. So, how are you marketing this to your customers?
Well, like I said, I think we're consumer inspired in everything that we do. I always say guest is boss. And so when we understand their needs, wants, motivations better than anyone else, they typically reward us with their business. That's been the model that's worked well for us. And again, that talks about being externally focused versus having internal preferences guide our decision. But our marketing is really holistic. It starts with a new building design. We are doing a lot of remodels. And again, it really expresses who we are. We've modified our logo. We say famous fingers and sauces. We actually have a sauce constellation built on the building that really puts that flavor profile front and center in the experiential piece. So our buildings are obviously our biggest marketing assets, the thing that everyone sees in their community 24/7. And then, in speaking of our app, we redesigned the app experience to be very sauce forward. It's very intuitive. You can mix and match. We have a lot of customization capabilities within there, so that, yeah, we're going to default to Zax sauce, but if you want to have some fun with it, order some extra, save your order and do it again. We're going to make that easy for you, and we're going to give you reasons to use that app experience for high quality service with accuracy and a lot of rewards as well. And then more recently, in what I would call, what you probably were referencing, media. We do the Who's Got the Sauce campaign. And again, that's just born of the consumer insight that people like to express themselves through flavor variety. There's an affinity that comes with our brand, and everyone has their own concoction that makes sense. And so Who's Got the Sauce as a platform for our brand campaign obviously references the fact that we have a variety of sauces. But I think more importantly, there's a colloquial term of Who's Got the Sauce, which means personality, expression, swagger, confidence, that we're really playing on. And that's why we generated the Sauce Boss. So everything's really enveloped in that work. But I would tell you the last expression of this is a lot of the work we're doing with influencers. And so, for example, when we launched Lemon Pepper, we partnered with an Atlanta native rapper named Quavo. And Quavo is wildly popular. I think he's got 24 million plus followers on Instagram. And this guy knows lemon pepper. I mean, he's a connoisseur. And he has the sauce, clearly. So by working with someone with him, we're extending not beyond our sauce box and our sauces, but we're empowering others as well. And so that's how the holistic program begins to come together.
And how about value? It seems like a lot of fast casuals and QSRs are pushing value now because that's something customers are really interested in. How are you promoting that?
Well, first of all, we've never been a broad-based discounting brand. It's not who we are. It's not what our franchisees have come to expect from us. We serve a premium product that it can and should command a premium at QSR. Now, we're not insensitive to what we see in the marketplace. But again, we have chosen not to do broad-based discounting. And in many respects, that can be a race to the bottom if you're not careful. And we've chosen to do selective discounting for our most valued guests through our loyalty program. We've got about close to 7 million people in that loyalty program now. We're one of the most top 10 apps that you get credit for in the industry. And we do selective discounting through there, through targeted offers, limited time weekend type things. We want to reward those guests and build frequency. So that is our primary vehicle for any degree of discounting or rewards. But I go back to value in the small V is price point. We're not going to participate there. Mm-hmm. Value with a big V is the experience you have, the quality of the product, and the price you pay. And rather than focusing on lowering our prices, we decided to double down on the quality of the product that you're experiencing and the service with which it's delivered. And we've outperformed the industry 7 of the last 18 months with that as the way we want to approach our strategic advantage. So that's how we're addressing it. But certainly, we all read the same data. It is important. People are feeling a little bit of that economic pressure right now, and they're being more selective. We just think that there's, for Zaxby's, there's a better way to get there, and that's focusing on quality and innovation.
Well, you've answered all my questions. Is there anything else you want to add about the menu or where Zaxby's is going next?
Well, Zaxby's has a lot in store. We have an amazingly talented culinary team, and I think you've seen the way we approach innovation. It's structured and it's rigorous, but I think that the real secret to our success is innovating with intent. We don't do it for novelty. We do it for impact. And when we think about impact, we're talking about serving guests better than anyone else can, giving them reasons to come to us for products they can't find anywhere else, but are still relatively close to our core. And then I think it's also about impact for our franchisees, preserving their sales and profitability. It's really an important triangle to get right: the business, the brand, the consumer, and then our franchisees. And that's the way we think about it. And I think the final thing I just continue to reinforce, because I'm just here to represent the marketing and culinary organizations, but can't emphasize it enough. It takes a team. It takes a team who is willing to push some boundaries, who works hard, who believes in what we're doing to a strategic vision. And I'm very fortunate here at Zaxby's to have great product supply partners who make things like shrimp happen, or a quesadilla, or imagine when I talked about milkshakes and the equipment, and they make it happen. And then you go over to operations, and every time we talk about adding some menu item or how it's going to affect the business, we've got to go through all the downstream impacts of cost and labor and speed of service and accuracy. And they've been a steadfast partner in that. And we always work together to make sure that whatever we decide for the business also makes sense for operations. And even down to IT, as I mentioned, you've got to program all these things in your app. You've got to find ways where people can order them, and we're bringing in LTOs. And so they've developed a tremendous amount of agility to help us support these programs. And so if there's one thought I'd leave you, it's that we focus on innovation with impact, and we do it as a team.
Mayonnaise is a simple ingredient with a critical mission in professional kitchens. So why is selecting the right mayonnaise so complex? From extra heavy duty to real super premium, the category terminology causes unnecessary confusion. And the lack of standardization can lead to disappointing results, dissatisfied customers, and costly waste. Visit venturafoods.com/mayo needs to help you find the right mayonnaise for your operation.